Hello everyone, and welcome to our class, Programming for Everyone, Part 2. I wanted to first begin this video by introducing myself. My name is Nazar Dejani, and I will be instructor for this class. So it's my sincere pleasure to spend the coming few weeks with you. And it's my personal preference that you call me by my first name. So there's no need for doctor, professor, or even mister. In other words, please just call me Nazar. Now, I already posted an introduction about myself in the onboarding discussion forum, so please do the same if you haven't already done so. These introductory posts can help us to learn more about each other, and I would like to get to know you better, and so these introduction posts help to do just that. Now, a little bit about myself. I've been programming applications since 1997, and I've been teaching since 2009. I actually got into teaching by accident. You see, when I began pursuing my PhD degree, I had no intention of teaching with it. I just wanted the knowledge and the experience of getting a doctorate degree. And shortly after getting my degree, I found an email in my spam folder from someone called Mark Harmon. Now, normally I just delete spam messages as part of my cleanup email effort. However, the name Mark Harmon caught my attention because it means something to me. You see, I'm a fan of a TV show called NCIS, and the main character, Gibbs, is played by an actor called Mark Harmon. So I was surprised that I got an email from Mark Harmon. Now, of course, it wasn't the NCIS actor, but just a similarity in names. But to my good luck, when I opened up the email, it was from a college program chair looking to recruit me as an instructor for a programming class. So I discussed the opportunity with my wife, and I went for it, which I'm glad I did, because I've been loving it and doing it since 2009 with no plans in stopping anytime soon. So that's my story of how I got into teaching by accident. Now, one thing I noticed while working with students is that they approach programming classes with a mix of emotions. I mean, some are worried and even afraid, while others are very excited. And then there are those, of course, who are somewhere along this broad spectrum. And regardless which sentiment you're experiencing right now, please rest assured that I'm here to help you succeed in this class and to make it a positive education experience for you. And this leads me to what I wanted to discuss next, which is my teaching style. Now, I believe that we all learn through different methods, and at different rates as well. Some students like to watch videos, others like to read, some like to see examples, and so on. So this class can offer all that. As for the rate of learning, it will also vary from student to student. For me personally, I need to read any new material a couple of times for things to sink in, and I also learn better by doing. So for example, when I'm learning a new programming language, I will start out by reading a little bit on it, watch a few videos, then I start coding a few lines of code and playing with it. But that's just me. And also part of my teaching style is that I allow corrections on assignments. For example, you might submit something that is completely off, or perhaps you misunderstood the assignment's requirements, so you didn't score well on the grade for that particular assignment. Now, instead of me just giving you a low grade and leaving it at that, I will share with you my grading feedback, then ask you to make the needed updates, and then ask you to resubmit the assignment once again. Now, I do this for two reasons. The first is that we all learn from our mistakes, and so this approach will help you to learn the material better. And the second reason is that this will allow you to improve your grade. So I hope these two things will give you some peace of mind and take off some of the anxiety that you might be feeling about this class. Now, I intend to make a weekly video for our class, and during these videos, I will be covering the weekly material, doing a PowerPoint presentation to cover the theory behind the weekly material, and I will certainly be doing lots of code examples. I also will be covering the weekly assignments, and I pretty much will be doing the assignments during these videos as well. Now, I do this extra help as a way to help you understand the concepts well, and if you are serious about learning to code, please also spend time on your own to practice all the things we learn during these videos. If you just copy what I do, it will not be enough for you to develop and grow as a programmer. So please watch what I do, complete your assignments, but then spend an hour or more each day by practicing programming, modifying the code in our assignments, giving yourself some what if I do this type scenario. And when something doesn't work, please try to troubleshoot it. This is when the learning truly kicks in. So watching me write code is helpful, but you also need to play around with it, write some code yourself, and also troubleshoot it when you have any problems. Okay, now since this is our first video, I wanted to mention that if you need to reach me, the best ways are either through the school's email, which is ndejani@rise.education, or through the Canvas inbox. The other way is the Q&A discussion forum in our class. Now just please remember that the Q&A discussion forum is a public forum that can be viewed by the entire class. And so if you need to send me something that pertains only to you, please email me instead. Alright, now this class is an 8-week class. It means that the material is condensed into less time, so we need to be on top of things and not fall behind. Also, each week runs from Monday through Sunday. This means that assignments are due each week on Sunday by midnight. And if you ever need some extra time for your assignment, please do reach out to me via email and I'll work with you to allow it. Having said that, please don't leave your schoolwork to Sunday evening, as that's just poor time management, and you'll not gain much knowledge when you attempt to squeeze the assignment work in such a short time. My suggestion is to break up the weekly work effort over several days. I also believe that you need to practice coding each day for at least an hour, at least for the first few months, so you can build and grow your coding skills. And I'm confident you all could be excellent programmers. Okay, I wanted to spend just a few minutes and go over the week 1 material. You can see here we are in the week 1, starting on the 24th and ending on the 30th, and it's about introduction to OOP, which is object-oriented programming, and classes. Now each week they're going to be broken down into 3 sections. There's the overview section, assignments, and then resources. Please read every single page in these sections, as they have information that's going to be helpful for you. For example, read the week 1 overview. For the assignments, make sure you go through all of them. And then resources, we give you some resources. Some could be an article to read, some could be a video to watch, and so on. So please go through all of them one by one. Now, starting with assignments, we have what is called a attendance check. That's the first thing we have to do. Now, this is a school requirement. Actually, it's your school requirement to help gauge or to help confirm that you are in attendance for that week. It only takes just a few seconds, so please follow the link and complete the necessary task, which again should not take much time. Then our very first assignment is the onboarding survey. It's due June 30th. It's worth 20 points. And if you go into the details, basically it says this survey is worth 20 points. And when you take the survey, you should get an email confirming that you completed the survey. So to submit this assignment, take a screenshot of this email and then submit the screenshot. And that's going to be worth 20 points. Again, it's not going to take much of your time. We do value your input, so please share your candid and honest feedback. And once you get that email, please take a screenshot and submit it in this assignment upload. Okay, so that's the first assignment, the onboarding survey. Next, we have the academic policy quiz. And when I open that up, you can see first that we allow you 2 attempts, okay? And there is no time limit. It's made up of 12 questions. It's worth 10 points. Again, it's going to be due on Sunday by midnight. Now, to be able to answer these questions correctly, you can study the policies by clicking on this link here, and it's going to tell you all the information you need to know. Okay, so please study the policies and then take the quiz when you're ready. The next assignment is the onboarding introduction discussion, which when I open here, basically this is the introduction forum, and it's actually spread over 2 weeks. If you notice, the due date is July 7th, not June 30th. So it's broken up into 2 weeks. The first week is when you post your introduction post, and here are the details of what you should be talking about. And then in the second week, please reply to at least one of your classmates, or you can also reply to my post as well. You'll get half points for the assignment for the initial post, and then you'll get half for your follow-up message. Okay, so this is for the onboarding introduction discussion. Next, we have our main assignment, which is assignment 1. And when we open that up, basically there's the context here. Please read that. And then here are the detailed steps of what exactly you have to do. So basically it says we need to create a Python script, call it introduction.py. So within this script, you need to define a class named person, and the class should have the following attributes: name, which is of the string type, age, integer type, country, string type. And these attributes should be set during the initialization of a person's project. Now again, I will be showing you the code solution for this assignment so you could follow through with me. So just in case this is a little bit too scary or too complicated, please relax, it's okay. I will show it to you step by step. And within our person class, we need to add a method called introduce_yourself. And this method should print a string in the format of, hello, my name is so-and-so, I'm this many years old, and I'm from this country. Okay. Once we do that, then we need to create 2 persons objects. with different attributes, of course. And it gives you an example here. You might create one person object representing a 30-year-old named John from Canada, and another person object representing a 25-year-old Maria from Spain. But it also says you can also create a person object of yourself or a classmate. In other words, it's flexible and you can make up your own name, your own age, and your own country. Then we need to call the introduce yourself method on both person objects and observe the output. And of course, you have to ensure that the printed output matches the attributes of each person object. In other words, you have to test your code, make sure that it runs fine, and that the output is indeed the expected output. And once you're happy with how your application is running, then of course save your Python file and then submit the Python into the Canvas submission area. And before I dive into this assignment, let me do a presentation first on the concepts, then we can come back and dive into completing this assignment. Alright, object-oriented programming. Most probably you've been using object-oriented programming already, and by that I mean when we use the dot notation to call attributes or methods of an existing object, like dot append when we add an item to a list. So to learn about object-oriented programming, we will need to learn about some new terminology like class, object, attribute, method, inheritance, polymorphism. But again, don't be intimidated by these new terms, as I will take my time to explain them with examples. And before diving into these object-oriented programming terms, please understand that object-oriented programming is not specific to Python or any other programming language. It's simply an approach to designing, organizing, and writing code. Now, Python is a multi-paradigm programming language, which means it supports different programming approaches or styles. And one of those programming styles to solve a programming problem is by creating objects. And that's why this style is known as object-oriented programming. And an object has two characteristics, attributes and behaviors. For example, a student in your application can be an object with the following properties: name, date of birth, and GPA. These are examples of attributes, which are basically variables. And behaviors of a student in your application can be things like studying and graduating. Now, you are probably familiar with behaviors as being called functions. So classes have variables, which are called attributes, and classes also have functions, which are also called behaviors. Actually, when a function belongs to a class, it's called a method, not a function. But if a function is a standalone function, meaning it doesn't belong to a class, then we refer to it as just a function. And the concept of object-oriented programming in Python focuses on creating reusable code. This concept is also known by the acronym DRY, which stands for Don't Repeat Yourself. So just like functions allow us to create code once and use multiple times, classes are similar because we create reusable objects which also have reusable functions. Alright, so I wanted to step back a bit first and talk about data types, which will help us to better understand classes. So in Python, we have simple data types like strings, integers, floats, and booleans, and we also have a bit more complex types like lists and dictionaries. But sometimes there's a need to create other data types that are custom-made for a particular scenario, and that's where the term class comes into play. So a class is a user-defined blueprint or a template from which objects are created. So since I use the word object, it's basically an instance of a class, which means it's an example of the template. So think of it like the class is the master template, and every time we make a copy of the template and use it, we are now creating an object of that class. And classes provide a means of bundling data and functionality together. So data is the attributes that I mentioned in the last slide, and functionality is the behavior, which are the methods of that class. So creating a new class creates a new type of object, which then allows new instances of that type to be made. And each class instance can have attributes attached, and each class instance can have attributes attached to it, and class instances can also have methods. Now, this is all theoretical and it might not make sense, so let's see an example of a class and how we make an object out of it. Alright, so say I'm writing code for a game that includes parrots as the key characters. So then it makes sense to create a class called parrot since the game involves parrots. Now, to code that in Python, we type the word class followed by the name of the class, which in this case is parrot. Then we follow by a colon. This is the class header. And when we hit enter, we get an indentation, and then anything inside the indentation is part of that class. So for now, this class is empty because it doesn't have any attributes or methods, but in a few moments, we will add those. Now, since I have a class, even though it's temporarily empty, I can now create an instance of that class, which would be my object. So now I can create an object, let's call it parrot1, and set it equal to the name of my class, which is parrot, followed by parentheses. So parrot1 is now an object of class parrot. So let's go to the next few slides and show you more classes with attributes and methods. Now in this code, we created a class with the name parrot. Then we define attributes, which could be class attributes or instance attributes. And I'll talk about the difference between the two types of attributes soon. But in general, the attributes are characteristics of an object, so they are things that describe the object. In the case of parrots, they usually have a name and age. Now these attributes are defined inside the init method of the class. And notice that this method is surrounded by double underscores. So class methods that begin and end with double underscores are called special methods because they have special meaning. They're also called magic methods as well as dunder methods, where dunder is short for double underscore, because before and after the method's name, we have double underscores. Now, one particular method is the init method. This special method gets called whenever a new object of that class is instantiated, which is just a fancy word for creating something. Now, this type of method is also called a constructor, and we normally use it to initialize all the variables. You actually don't have to explicitly include the init method, but most of the time your object needs to set up some values and use them, so that's why it's helpful to use the special init method with underscores to initialize any needed attributes. Now init is also short for initialization, so the initializer method is first run as soon as the object is created. And this method takes three parameters: self, name, and age. Name and age are self-explanatory, but what is the self parameter? Well, I'll explain that in just a few moments. Then in our code, we create two instances of the parrot class. We call one object blue, and another object of the parrot class is called woo. And we assign them both to instances of the parrot class, each with different arguments. The first argument is the name, while the second argument is the age. Notice how we don't pass the self argument? Again, I'll explain that in just a few minutes. Now, we also have class attributes, which are the same for all instances of the class. In our parrot example, we have a class attribute called species, and we set that value to bird. So, since class is the template, then we create an instance of this class, meaning a new object, so we get access to this class attribute along with its value. So when I create the blue object or the woo object and call the species attribute, the value is the same since it's a class attribute, and so all of its objects would get the same value. In other words, class attributes are the same for all instances of a class. However, instance attributes are different for every instance of a class. So as you can see, blue.name prints out blue, and blue.age prints out 10, while woo.name prints out woo, and woo.age would be 15. Now in this code here, it's again the parrot class, but we now define two methods, sing and dance. These are called instance methods because they are called on an instance object, like the object that is called blue. As for the sing method, it takes one argument, which is the name of the song, while dance doesn't take any arguments. Now as I promised, let me explain the self word, since it keeps popping up as a parameter in every function definition. For example, you may have noticed the self parameter in the dance function definition, but when we call the method as blue.dance, we don't pass any arguments. So how does this still work? Well, this is because whenever an object calls its method, the object itself is passed as the first argument. So blue.dance actually translates into parrot.dance with blue as a passed argument. And so the self parameter is used to hold the name of the object, which in this case, it's blue. So in general, calling a method with a list of X number of arguments is equivalent to calling the corresponding method with an argument list that is created by inserting the method's object before the first argument, which we capture by the word self. And it's for these reasons that the first parameter of the method in a class must be the object itself. And by the way, the word self is not a reserved word or keyword in Python. And actually you can swap out the word self for any other word, but it has become part of best programming practices to use that word self. Okay, so this is my version or my take on completing the assignment for week 1. And again, it's asking us to create a class called person. So again, we use the class reserved word in Python, and then the name of my class is called person, followed by a colon. Again, this is what we learned just a few moments ago. Use the class word, which is a reserved keyword in Python, followed by a name of a class, and you can call that class anything you want, followed by a colon. And then anything that's indented, like this is part of the class person. Alright, so let's dissect, or let's delve deep into what we have in this class person. Here we have a method, and here we have another method. Now this is one of those special methods because the init method that's surrounded by double underscores is called a magic method or a special method or a dunder method because it has double underscores before and after. And this special init method takes self as a parameter, name, age, and country. Okay, and now we learned that self basically is a default parameter because it will take on the actual object that we instantiate from our class. And we'll see that in just a moment. And then name, age, and country, these are parameters that need to be passed once we do a method call. And these three parameters are used to help create these attributes in our init method. So again, the init method gets called automatically when an object is created. And here we are explicitly declaring it or defining it because we want to declare a few items and use them in our class. If I don't define the init method explicitly, it will still get called implicitly in the background without us knowing, because every time we create an object of a class, the init method will get run in the background. But if I explicitly define it here, then this will override the implicit option. So implicit is just going to create an object for that class, but explicitly it's going to create an object for the class, but then it's going to do much more as we specify here. Okay, so init is always going to get called as soon as you create an object. Now, depending on if you explicitly define it or not, it still will be run in the background. The next method we have here is a method called introduce yourself, and it doesn't take any parameters or any explicit parameters, but it does take the self parameter. Again, the self is going to be the parameter that holds the object that gets created from this class. And all it does is just returns a print statement that says, hello, my name is self.name. And what is self.name? Well, it's basically this guy here. And what is the value of this attribute? Well, the value is assigned to name. And what is name? Well, it's this parameter. And what is this parameter? Well, it's whatever gets passed when we call or when we instantiate an object of that class. Then it says I'm self.age. Again, self.age is an attribute defined here. It's a instance attribute, and the value is assigned to age, and age is basically a parameter, and parameter is passed as an attribute, is passed as an argument in a method call. Followed by years old, and I'm from self.country. Again, self.country is defined as this attribute, which is assigned a value of country, which is the value that gets passed as a parameter, which is the value that gets passed as an argument in this method call. Okay, so again, this whole class is this. It has two methods. One method initializes these attributes, and another method just returns a string. Alright, so now that we have a class defined, let's start using it. Now, to create an object out of a class, we're basically instantiating the person class. the way to do it is you call the class by its name, so person, and then you need to pass it the expected arguments. So person, when it gets instantiated, is going to be using the init method, and the init method is expecting self, name, age, and country. I'm going to be passing it John, 30, and Canada. So John is going to be name, 30 is going to be age, Canada is going to be country, and self is going to be the object's name that we create. Now I'm going to say person John 30 Canada, I'm going to assign it a variable called P1. So P1 is going to be my object of the person class. So P1 is technically going to be self. Okay, that's the name of the object that I just created of the person class with these attributes. And I don't have to just create one person. I can create many persons. I can create 100 persons. So basically, again, this is a template, and from this template I can create one object, two objects, and so on. That's the beauty of taking the template and just applying it over and over and over and over again, every time modifying the arguments so that I create a different person from the person object. So I have a P1 as an object of person, and I have P2 as an object of person. Okay, the difference is P1 is going to be called John as a name, 30 years old, from Canada. P2 is going to be Maria as a name, 25 years old, from Spain. So now that I have P1 and P2, both which are objects of the person class, now I have access to whatever the person class has to offer. So the person class only offers two methods. The init method, which runs automatically when I create an object, which happens when I click on when I created P1 and P2. And then P1 and P2 now, because they're an object of person, they also have access to this method. So now I can say P1 dot, dot notation, and then I'm going to have access to anything that's part of the person class, which one of them is the introduce yourself method. Now the introduce yourself method doesn't take any arguments because there are no parameters here except for self. So the self is technically going to be the name of the object, which is, in this case, it's the P1. And then I also going to call the P2 object and call the introduce yourself method, which again is going to be this one, but for the P2 object, which is Maria, 25, in Spain. So if I run this now, do F5 as a shortcut. Let's expand this. I get, for the first one, I get hello, my name is John, which is correct. I'm 30 years old and I'm from Canada. And then I get hello, my name is Maria, I'm 25 years old and I'm from Spain. So this output is the expected output from this code here. And every time you create code, you have to make sure that you run it and that the output is the expected output. Now, this is where the assignment requirements stop, and this would give you full marks. Now, please don't forget to comment your code, even though the assignment doesn't say so, but part of best programming practice is you always have to comment your code. So please comment your code. But don't just stop here. What I would like you to do is either work with the same file or basically make a copy of it and then start making changes to it and see how these changes behave. Okay, give yourself again some, what if I do this, or give yourself some new scenarios and try to see how you can code it. And if you walk into problems, try to troubleshoot it, look on the internet for solutions. And of course, if you're way stuck, please do reach out to me. And every time you reach out to me with a coding question, please send me the actual .py file so I can troubleshoot it for you and let you know what's going on. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up the week 1 video. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions, and by all means do reach out at any time you want. Again, you can email me either directly at ndejani@rise.education, or you can email me through the Canvas inbox, or you can also post something on the Q&A forum. Just please note that the Q&A forum is a public place, so anything you type will be seen by everyone. So if you have something that pertains only to you, then please email me instead directly. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in class. Take care. Bye for now.